Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. The Honorable, the Minister of Public Works and Housing of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Basuki Hadimuljono. The PRC First Delegate and the Director General of Highways, the Ministry of Public Works and Housing of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Hedi Rahadian. The PRC Secretary General, Mr. Patrick Malléjacq. The President of Road Engineering Association of Asia and Australasia, or REAAA, Mr. Sung-Hwan Kim. All speakers, panelists, moderators, and all the seminar participants who are attending on site in Yogyakarta and online through Zoom meeting. A very good morning to you all and welcome to Yogyakarta, Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, today, 22nd of November 2022, we are here for the international seminar, Climate Change Resilience and Disaster Management for Roads. This event is hosted by PRC in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Works and Housing of the Republic of Indonesia, Road Engineering Association of Asia and Australasia, or REAAA, and Indonesian Road Development Association, or HPJI. The seminar is held for 2 days, which is today and tomorrow. To begin this event, we would like to sing the national anthem of Indonesia. Marilah kita menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dimohon untuk berdiri. Ladies and gentlemen, please be raised. Audience, please be seated. Next, a committee report by the Chief of Committee. We would like honorably to invite to the podium Mr. Triono Junoasmono.
Pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Your Excellency, Minister of Public Works and Housing, the Republic of Indonesia, Dr. M. Basuki Hadimuljono, Your Honorable Director General of Highways, Dr. Hedi Radian, Your Honorable Pihak General Secretary, Mr. Patrick Malléjacq, Your Honorable the President of REAAA, Mr. Sung-Hwan Kim, Honorable Representative of Pihak World Road Association, Road Engineering Association of Asia and Australasia, and Indonesia Road Development Association, Honorable the Board of Director of Directorate General of Highways, Ministry of Public Works and Housing, all attendees, all participants, ladies and gentlemen. Through this opportunity, I would like to express my highest gratitude to Pihak for choosing Indonesia to host this international seminar, and also Director General of Highways, Mr. Dr. Hedi Radian, for organizing this event. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to shortly report to all of you about the event. This seminar is attended by 275 persons on site and also 150 persons off site, which is totally 425 persons. For your information, the Minister, there are 35 international materials that will be carried out by all the speakers, which is 25 from the international speakers and 11 from the local speakers. All the registered participants come from the various backgrounds, such as lecturers, public sectors, private sectors, investors, contractors, consultants, experts, road association and organization from overseas, such as Japan, South Korea, France, China, Greece, Australia, United States, Norwegia, New Zealand, Poland, Malaysia, Uganda, Chile, South Africa, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Taiwan, Thailand, Mexico, Germany, Italy, and also, of course, Indonesia as the hosting country. This event comes with two important activities. The first one is the knowledge sharing from various experts from climate change, resilience, and disaster management for roads. The second is the meeting of Pihak TC 1.4 and TC 1.5 of the technical committee. Following the agenda, this event begins with the Pihak TC 1.4 and 1.5 meeting and gala dinner on Monday yesterday, followed by seminar on Tuesday and Wednesday, and carried out by technical visit at Kretek Bridge and Pansela Road on Thursday, and ended with the Pihak final meeting on Friday. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, climate change and other hazards have a wide range of implications on the performance of road infrastructure and can cause disruptions to road network operation. Disaster mitigation is needed to lessen the impact disaster on people and property, particularly on road infrastructure. This seminar also seeks to provide an overview of challenges to manage the climatic impact and road resilience by presenting approaches and case studies from different countries. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this knowledge and experiences gained from various backgrounds from all experts and speakers we could share with each other so that we can make the better world. This is our step to host next international event, Pak Menteri. The Road Engineering Association of Asia and Australia, REAAA, the 50th anniversary celebration conjunction with the 120 years of REAAA Governing Council meeting, which is bigger than this event and planned to be held end of next year, hopefully will be in Bali, Indonesia. We hope that this international seminar could enhance spirit through promoting the science and practice the road and bridge engineering. On behalf of the committee, I hope this event could go well as planned. I hope everybody can enjoy this seminar and welcome to Yogyakarta. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bapak Yongki, for the
Sabang
committee
at the
report.
western tip, Merauke at the eastern end, from Miangas at the north end to Rote Island at the south end. We fringe a country, 16,671 islands, 416 regencies, 98 cities. The diversity of culture and tradition. Over 272 million people. 70.72% working age population. Who holds the willpower and vigorous to work fingers to the bone are potential assets to develop progressive and robust nation. That is Indonesia. Vision of an advanced Indonesia 2045. An eminent society that is civilized and proficient in science and technology, advanced and sustainable economy, equitable and inclusive development, a democratic and strong country, good governance. We build growth centers, industrial areas, special economic zone, tourism areas, agricultural areas spread throughout Indonesia. Indonesia is building a new capital city to accelerate the economic equality, to create new growth centers, millions job opportunities. To support them, we've built dozens of dams, millions hectares of irrigations, thousands kilometers of toll roads, hundreds of bridges, hundreds of residential facilities and infrastructure, millions of housing units. But that is not enough. Many challenges need to be faced. Nevertheless, opportunities are open up. Infrastructure investment in Indonesia is wide open and have promising future. Ease of doing business, cooperation, collaboration, innovation are what we need. Infrastructure development continues to be enhanced, fulfilling the expectation of our people to live more prosperously, to see a growing Indonesia, commensurate to other nations. That is not just a dream. We are capable. Challenges before us. Let's together build Indonesia. Infrastructure for advanced and prosperous Indonesia.
Next, we would like honorably to invite to the podium to give a welcome speech the Minister of Public Works and Housing of the Republic of Indonesia, Mr. Basuki Hadimuljono.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to everybody. Honorable Secretary General of World Road Association, Mr. Patrick, President of Road Engineering Association of Asia and Australasia, Dr. Sung-Hwan Kim, Professor Quinn from the University of Birmingham.
Recording in progress.
Director General for Highways and Chair of Indonesia Road Development Association, Dr. Hadi Rahadian. All colleagues, speakers, participants, member of IRDA, and distinguished guests of the international seminar. I'm happy that I heard some of the delegation from abroad has been here since Saturday or Sunday and made a city tour or maybe to Borobudur. That's good. Enjoy Yogyakarta. It is really my great pleasure to host and to welcome all of you to the International Seminar on Climate Change, Resilience and Disaster Management for Roads at the Marriott Hotel Yogyakarta. Maybe if, Pak Endra, can you share the photo that last night? This is the in conjunction, because last night I was in Cianjur because of that big landslide, because of the earthquake. So the topic of the seminar is really matched with the condition now. I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation for all distinguished delegates and guests for participating in this seminar. Ladies and gentlemen, during the period of 2015-22, or 8 years of President Joko Widodo's mandate, more than 1,750 kilometers of toll road has been built and operated. And about 5,000 kilometers of non-toll road has been developed to connect border areas in Kalimantan, Papua, and East Nusa Tenggara, in a remote island, as well as to connect cities to airports, harbors, tourism destination areas, food estate, and industrial estate. Infrastructure development in Indonesia should produce in a more resilient infrastructure to cope with the challenges of Indonesia's geographical location, which lies on the natural disaster-prone area. Thousands of natural disasters have occurred in the last couple of years, comprising of floods, extreme weathers, including tropical typhoon, landslides, and earthquakes. These recent years, the trend of La Nina is positive in Indonesia, resulting in long wet years and extreme weather during the monsoon. Climate change aggravates the impact on our infrastructure, especially road and bridges. Therefore, we are focusing on quality and environmental sustainability aspects in road development, as we are aware of the fact that Indonesia road networks are susceptible to multiple risks. Indonesia is also committed to implement the Sendai framework as well as other international commitments. According to the recent JICA research, every $1 invested in risk reduction and prevention can save up to 15 US dollar in post-disaster recovery. And every $1 US invested in developing disaster-resilient infrastructure can save up $4 in reconstruction cost. As a country with middle to high intensity of rainfall through all years, Government of Indonesia carries out preventive and curative approaches in risk reduction management. Preventive approach is primarily important and is executed through structural and non-structural measures. In terms of structural measures on roads infrastructure development, we concentrate on 4 main strategies, such as first, focusing on the development and rehabilitation of higher capacity roads drainage and flood management system. As we also learned that in the road development, we have to fight with 3 things: water, water, and water, right? So drainage and flood management in road system for road engineer is the most important for the quality of the road itself. Strengthening slope stability and applying slope protection to prevent slope failure on road networks. And third, constructing a more durable road pavement to cope with longer wet season. And the last one, the 4, protecting road bridges from score damage due to climate change and extreme weathers. Those efforts are undertaken to our infrastructure more resilient to cope with natural hazard. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in terms of non-structural measures, we are committed to continue utilizing digital transformation for a more efficient and smart construction projects. We apply the use of building information system in our toll road project, such as in Semarang-Demak toll road and in Indonesia new capital city that we are planning to build since this year. The use of meteorological data or weather prediction from the Agency for Meteorological, Climatological, and Geophysical are the basis for responding to hydrometeorological related disaster risk. We pay attention to the use of data in all stages of infrastructure development, from planning, construction, operation, and maintenance in order to mitigate disaster risks of infrastructure. This has been applied on the construction and the operation of the flood control system in our dams. We have a strong intention to apply it in a wider sector like road development and maintenance. In addition, in the current development of new capital city, Nusantara, we encourage green mobility concept for pedestrian, cyclists, as well as integrated transportation as part of connectivity planning and management that should be done to contribute on the construction of reduction of carbon emission. We also engage in a continuous improvement of our human resources, especially to have a bold expertise in road and bridges development, sustainable and green mobility, digital transformation, as well as road assets management. Last but not least, regarding to curative approach, interagency cooperation to disaster management prevention is a key to success. Together with National Agency for Disaster Management, Ministry of Public Works and Housing is committed to establish the task force for emergency responses to keep the infrastructure, including road networks, connected and functional after affected by catastrophic disaster. I strongly believe that the discussion of those topics will give us deep insight with recurring disasters and how to mitigate their impact, as well as be able to build back better towards more resilient and sustainable environment. To conclude my remarks, I would like to thank the organizing committee for arranging this important seminar. For me, myself, seminar, intellectual discussion is never-ending process that we have to maintain it forever in order to keep pace with the development of technology improvement. I hope to see a fruitful collaboration between researchers, engineers, and industrial actors in supporting the innovation and initiative in disaster risk reduction to improve road quality and sustainability, especially in Indonesia. Before I conclude, I think I will show you some slide, some picture that just last night we did something to open the connectivity from Jakarta to Cianjur that now hit by the earthquake 5.6 Richter scale. This is the road to go to Cianjur from Jakarta. Next, this is the landslide from the right to the left. This is just last night. I went there, I visited at 10 o'clock and until 4 o'clock in the morning. Just after that, directly to come here. Next is still my friends, team of the Ministry of Public Works and Housing did something. Next. See, it's a little bit open. There are two places that hit by the landslide. The total length is about 150 meters. So we have to clean up. And the president would like to come this afternoon, and he called me this morning. That's why I give this speech earlier. So I will be back after this to accompany him to go to Cianjur. Go ahead. Next. See, next. Okay. So now it is already open and just remaining to clean up. So open traffic will be this afternoon. Thank you very much. Again, enjoy Jogja. And thanks, Pak Edi. So you can stay here. I will be back. So you have a lot of your friends, your guests, your honorable guests to continue this seminar. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Bapak Menteri. Mohon berkenan untuk tetap di panggung untuk pemberian plakat dan foto session. Dimohon berkenan Bapak Menteri untuk didampingi Bapak Dirjen untuk naik ke panggung, dan kami juga mengundang, we invite the PR Secretary General, Mr. Patrick Malléjacq, representative of speakers, Mr. Yukio, Ms. Caroline Evans, Bapak Arie Setiadi, dan Profesor Ira untuk juga bergabung untuk di podium untuk menerima plakat. This merchandise exchange is a token of appreciation for the PR Secretary General, Mr. Patrick Malléjacq, and also the representative or speakers. Let's give a best smiles. 1, 2, 3. Say smile. Okay. Thank you. We also invite the speakers. All the speakers, kita mengundang juga untuk pembicara dan juga moderator, dan juga the Chief of Committee, Mr. Triono Junoasmono, para BOD, Kepala Dinas PU Bina Marga dan Cipta Karya Provinsi Jateng, Kepala Dinas PU Perumahan dan Energi Sumber Daya Mineral Provinsi DIY untuk juga bergabung melakukan foto sesi. So now we will have a group photo as a token of appreciation to the speakers and also moderators, both international and local, that have attended this event. It's a large group photo. Please join all the speakers and moderators, both international and local, to do a photo session. Okay, ready? Okay. Please give the best smile. Yeah, one more. Say smile. Best smile. Show your best smile. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Thank you very much. Please be seated. We can continue the rundown. For now, we would like honorably to invite the President of Road Engineering Association of Asia and Australasia, or REAAA, Mr. Sung-Hwan Kim, to deliver a speech. Mr. Kim is joining us online through Zoom meeting.
Okay, speaker 켜서. Okay, I'm here.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Kim.
Okay, may I continue? Okay, thank you, moderator, and selamat pagi. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Sung-Hwan Kim, President of REAAA. First of all, I would like to congratulate on your second international seminar, Climate Change, Resilience, and Disaster Management for Road. Unfortunately, it's a shame that I couldn't see you in person and just participate in the Zoom. I'm so sorry again. I want to thank the Indonesian government for leading the event to inform us of the seriousness of a natural disaster and share the knowledge. In particular, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with the PRC which is leading the natural disaster response strategy in the road field. I am also happy to participate as a member of Arie AAA. I'm so sorry to hear about your earthquake disaster, but anyway, Arie AAA is an organization for the mutual technology exchange, a center for national institution dedicated to road management in 25 Asian and Oceanian countries. Indonesia is the central country of our association. ILDA and Bina Marga in MPWH are leading the way. In particular, with regard to climate change, the theme of this seminar today, the technical committee of our association actively exchange information on technology and institution among member countries. PRC is the leader in this area. We maintain close relationship among technical committees and conduct activities jointly. It seems that many results can be shared soon. People around the globe are experiencing dramatic heat waves, deadly floods, and wildfires as a result of climate change. Many parts of Earth have been temperatures of above 40 degrees Celsius this summer, leading to transport disruption and water shortage. In order to prevent the catastrophe of mankind caused by the climate warming, efforts are being made, especially by the United Nations. Last week, the UN COP27 conference was held in Egypt, and leaders and officers from 190 countries participated to reset their goals and actually discuss implementation plan to effectively tackle the global change of climate change. In fact, the construction industry accounts for about 25% of global carbon dioxide emission. So our construction industry is very responsible for climate change. The ocean absorbed over 9% of excess heat generated by climate change. The oceans began to warm at a rate 8 times faster than before. All of this has real consequences. Warmer ocean fuel more intense tropical storm, hurricane, tornado, sea level rise, and flooding. Natural disasters are large-scale events that have the potential to cause loss of life or properties. Sheer storm and flood are the most common type of natural disaster reported worldwide. Flooding, landslide cause disaster, injury, and homelessness every year and damage or destroy buildings, roads, and other infrastructures. Road networks are essential for economic, social, environmental, and security reasons. Road networks are therefore considered critical networks according to the consequences of their disruptions. Flooding poses an important threat to roads and can lead to massive obstruction of traffic and damage to road structures, with a possible long-term effect. In the event of a disaster such as a landslide, a lot of recovery budget and time are required. Therefore, preventing efforts are absolutely necessary by investigating and establishing countermeasures in advance. In relation to climate change, the design criteria in the national specifications should be adjusted by reviewing the characteristics of rainfall intensity and frequency. Specific countermeasures such as road geometry, pavement surface drainage systems such as site and transport drainage capacity, bridge location selection, and stability of cut slopes should be prepared. It is necessary a joint task of all mankind in order to reduce the root causes of disasters by climate change. Numerous organizations, including Greenpeace, the UN, and related organizations in each country are active. Despite their effort, it is also up to our engineers to minimize the damage caused by various disasters. The way to respond to disasters efficiently is prevention. For prevention, a synthetic prevention system should be established by securing systems, budget, and expert. Without prevention, natural disaster often turns into artificial disasters. If the countermeasures are set up after many trial and errors, it will cause a lot of loss. Even after many trial errors, they are often neglected, overlooked. In developing countries, it is often impossible to implement countermeasures due to a lack of budget. The result very depends on who is in charge as well. As the climate change intensifies, the frequency and scale of disasters are increasing despite the effort to prevent them. Delayed restoration results in a lot of loss of property and casualties. Therefore, it is also very important to establish an emergency recovery plan after a disaster in order to minimize losses. An emergency report system and contact network shall be established. Material, equipment, personnel shall be secured in advance. And a manual for emergency recovery measures shall be prepared as well. Even if all of these are well prepared, there are often many trial errors when a disaster occurs. The Korea Expressway Corporation has developed the emergency recovery systems well and adopted in the field. In conclusion, today, in fact, I have only said a little bit of a principle, but for the details methodologies, please find out the answer in subsequent seminar presentations. I hope all participants share a lot of experience and knowledge mutually through today's seminar and upgrade the synthetic prevention and recovery systems against the natural disaster. Once again, I would like to thank the MPWH officers preparing for today's international conference. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Delivered by PR Secretary General, we would like honorably to invite to the podium Mr. Patrick Malléjacq.
Honorable Director General of Highways, Honorable President of RAAA, it's an immense pleasure for me and for PIARC and a great honor to organize this international seminar today and tomorrow here in Yogyakarta, in Indonesia, on climate change, resilience, and disaster management for roads. Thank you very much for the invitation. And before I start my quick presentation, I would like to convey the message that our thoughts are with the victims of the earthquakes that struck the western part of the island yesterday. And I've been very impressed by the images and the quick recovery that was presented by the Honorable Minister a few minutes ago. So I will start by highlighting why roads are very important to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. If you want to bring goods to markets, if you want to bring children to schools, if you want to go to the hospital, if you want to develop the economy, you need roads and you need transport. Of course, all of this has to take place in the context of multimodal transport and sustainable transport, and as we have seen in the presentation from Dr. Kim of Arie AAA, the challenges are enormous. You may wonder as well, and this is particularly true in some parts of the world, why we keep talking about roads. I'm deeply convinced, and this is the mission of PIARC, the World Road Association, that roads and road transport are essential, and they keep improving. A road represents today about 80% of all inland transport in many, many countries. And of course, society's priorities evolve over time, and the challenges that we have to face evolve over time as well. And the climate change challenges are very pressing and very significant. If you take into account that solutions such as public transport, buses, for example, or shared mobility, or bicycles, which are very much in favor in many countries, these all need roads. And they all need roads that are well developed, properly designed, and properly maintained. This is why at PIARC, we have been developing knowledge on roads and road transport for more than a century, and we keep working on these topics because the expectations of societies and the challenges we have to face keep changing. So PIARC, some of you in the room may or may not be familiar with our organization. We were founded in 1909 as a non-profit organization with one mission, which is to share knowledge on every topic that is related to roads and road transport. We are recognized for the neutrality of our work. We are very proud to count as members 125 member governments, as well as private sector companies, universities, and even individuals. And the way we work is to rely on experts who are nominated by countries such as Indonesia, Australia, Japan, and many others, who work in technical committees. And I would like to use this opportunity now to thank my colleagues from committees 1.5 on climate change and resilience, and 1.5 on disaster management, and 1.4 on climate change and resilience. Their members who are present here today, and their chairs, Caroline Evans from Australia, and Yukio Adachi from Japan, who have devoted lots of time and lots of energy in organizing this seminar in Yogyakarta with our colleagues from the ministry in Indonesia. So as you can see here, we try to address all the topics that ensure that the road transport system is coherent, is safe, is reliable, and is sustainable. I have highlighted here two of our committees, the ones that you will be interacting with today and tomorrow. And as you can see, we have committees on road safety as well, tunnels, and many other topics. What they do is share knowledge between experts and encapsulate this knowledge into reports. On average, we publish more than one report per month, which is, a significant amount. And today or tomorrow, we will publish a new report from our committee on disaster management, for example. And I will not go through this list. Here on the screen, you can see some recent publications from our committees on disaster management here mentioned, such as the use on big data, for example. And I would like to invite everyone here in the room to go and check our reports. They are available for everyone to download and consult. We also organize lots of events. Committee meetings between experts, upon invitation, are very important events. So we were very happy to meet here in Indonesia yesterday, and the meetings will continue on Friday. Those are really great opportunities for experts from all over the world who have been appointed as members of our committee to share the knowledge and to identify who is working on what topics and who they can call if they have something to develop. Also, we organize seminars like this one, which are, I hope, relevant events. And as you can see here on this presentation, we organize lots of events, many of them now back to in-person events, but also many of them still online. And you are all very welcome to register your interest to join those events. Indonesia is a member country of PIARC for more than 20 years now. And we are very happy to count your country here as a member of our organization, which covers the whole world. If you are a member of our association, which is the case, you are able to access that network of experts. You are able to check our knowledge, to host seminars, and maybe even to join our congresses. This method of working, which is quite similar to what happens in our AAA in Asia and Australasia, is very efficient and cost-effective. If you have a problem somewhere, it's quite likely that in another country you will find colleagues who are trying to solve the same problem, or maybe in some cases who have already addressed it efficiently. So by working through networks like PIARCs, you are able to save time and hopefully be more efficient to answer your country's needs. I would also like to invite everyone here to join our Congress in Prague next year, beginning of October, so less than a year from now. This is where we will present all the work from all of our committees over a full week of sessions. So our committees on climate change and resilience and on disaster management will be there, of course, as well as many others. And we also invite partner organizations from all over the world on road safety or from the United Nations to present their work if it's connected to roads. And I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate experts from Indonesia who have presented a significant number of abstracts in answer to our call for proposals. I think this means that we'll be very lucky to interact with speakers from Indonesia next year, and that the knowledge and best practice that are developed here will be shared internationally. This is the end of this short presentation. I will be with you, and I would like again to thank the organizers and the ministry for this event and for the hospitality that we have witnessed to. I would like to thank the speakers and the delegates. Some of them have traveled long distances to be here in Yogyakarta. Some are in Zoom, so I would like to express the wish that our colleagues who are joining in Zoom online are also well connected with the sessions. I would like to invite everyone to ask questions to the speakers and to the delegates. And I would like to conclude by saying terima kasih as well. Thank you.
Now we will have a session 1, Adapting to Climate Change Risks and Disaster Management. The speakers for the session is Mr. Tim Sexton from the Minnesota Department of Transportation, USA, member of PRTC 1.4, and also Mr. Arie Setiadi Moerwanto, head of Disaster Management Task Force in Palu, Ministry of Public Works and Housing. So we would like honorably to invite to the podium our moderator, Caroline Evans. Ms. Caroline Evans is a chair of PRTC 1.4 and is also a deputy chair of RE Technical Committee on Climate Change, Resilience and Disaster Management. Evans to lead the session.
Selamat datang and welcome to all participants, speakers and distinguished delegates from PIARC and also RE and our host organisations. Welcome to Session 1, Adapting to Climate Change Risks and Disaster Management. By way of introduction, my name is Caroline Evans and I'm the moderator of this session. I'm the current chair of PIARC Technical Committee 1.4 Climate Change and Resilience of Road Networks, and also the co-chair of the Road Engineering Association of Asia and Australasia, RE Committee on Climate Change, Resilience and Disaster Management. I've been actively involved in PIARC for 11 years in the areas of climate change and resilience, and I'm delighted to be involved in this seminar over the next few days. I'd also like to present another thank you to the organising committee for their hard work and also preparations. I would also like to welcome the co-moderators of this session, Adib and Afran, who will be monitoring the questions from the virtual room and asking questions at the end of the presentations. They will also be co-moderating the sessions throughout the day. Now, just some housekeeping rules to start off. If you are connecting virtually, please submit your questions throughout the presentation. Questions will be collected and answered at the end of the session. To submit a question, use the chat feature under the video screen, and we will be taking questions from both the floor and also virtually. For this session, we have two speakers who will provide their presentations. I would first like to invite our first presenter, Tim Sexton, to the floor to provide his presentation on measuring progress towards a more resilient transportation system. Tim Sexton is the Assistant Commissioner for the Sustainability Planning and Project Management for the Minnesota Department of Transportation in the United States. He provides executive oversight for the sustainable transportation, model planning, research and innovation, asset management and programming the state's capital transportation program budget. Tim previously served as the first Chief Sustainability Officer at the State Department of Transportation and directed transit, biking, walking and environmental policy for programs in Minnesota and also Washington State. He holds leadership roles with the National Academy of Sciences Transportation Research Board, TRB, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, AASHTO, and also is the US delegate to the World Road Association, PIARC, Technical Committee on Climate Change Resilience. Please join me in welcoming Tim. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you to our hosts. This is my first time in Indonesia, and I'm just so grateful for the hospitality and generosity that we've experienced since arriving here on Sunday. I also want to let you know that I woke up today to many texts and calls from friends and family, just to know that everyone throughout the world is thinking of you all right now in light of the recent events in West Java. So I think it also, as has been said, really highlights the importance of the work that we're doing today and look forward to doing with you all as we move forward on climate change resilience and disaster management. We can go to the next slide, please. So a little bit about where I come from, Minnesota in the United States. It's in the upper Midwest, highlighted there in red. I was doing some quick math before coming up here, and we are about 35 degrees Celsius cooler right now today than in Minnesota than we are right here. And we've had, in some places, over 50 centimeters of snow in the last 2 weeks. So we have some different experiences, but I think I'd like to talk about also some of our similarities and how I think we can learn from one another. But Minnesota geographically is quite large in the United States, the 12th largest state by size. Population-wise, about 5.5 million, and most of that population is located in our capital city of St. Paul in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro region. I think one area, though, that I'll talk some more about, where we do have some similarities, is water. We heard earlier that water is a really important, when considering infrastructure in Indonesia. It's also really the driving issue in Minnesota. Shown here on the map is just all the rivers, lakes, and ponds. What's not shown is that the largest freshwater lake in the world, Lake Superior, is adjacent to Minnesota as well. But the Dakota, one of our indigenous tribes in Minnesota, named actually where the name Minnesota comes from, which means the land of sky blue waters. We're also known as the land of 10,000 lakes, but we actually have about over 15,000 named lakes and over nearly 3 million acres of land covered by water. So a lot of water. We'll talk about how it's a priority for Minnesota as well. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, I work for the Minnesota Department of Transportation. This is the State Department of Transportation. We work closely with our federal partners along with the local level, so cities and counties or provinces, cities and counties. We talk about roads, and we do a lot with roads. We have about 19,000 kilometers of roads that we own, which is only about 10% of all the roads in Minnesota. But on the roads that we manage, we have over 51 billion vehicle miles that travel on those roads each year. We also handle and are responsible for things like ports, waterways, airports, biking and walking, you can see here. But we have a commitment to sustainable transportation that includes mitigating emissions, but also preparing for our system for climate change that we know is already going to happen. Next slide, please. So, much like you all, water is important to us. When we think about the climate change that we're experiencing in Minnesota, it's really about things getting warmer and things getting wetter. Minnesota in the US is expected to be the #1 or #2 state most impacted by climate change. So we're really committed to understanding the impacts and preparing for them so we avoid disruptions to health and safety in the economy. What's shown here, though, is it reinforces how things are getting warmer and wetter. So the slide here on, I guess it's your left, looking at temperature, what's shown is really how the temperature is getting warmer, moving north. And while that sounds kind of nice, as I mentioned, it's about 35 degrees Celsius cooler right now in Minnesota. It actually has a lot of impacts to our system that was designed for cold weather. When you have a lot of freezing and thawing, as things get warmer, it's harder on our pavements. And so we're worried about reduced life cycles of our pavements and costing more. We also see a lot of impacts that I'll talk some more about to vegetation, to erosion, a lot of other things that happen when temperatures get warmer. On the right side, this is just really showing some changes in precipitation patterns. Average precipitation it's getting sort of wetter. The state is getting wetter as that line from 1924 to 2018. That wetness that used to be just in the south is now moving towards the north. And one of the ways that we evaluate the wetness is through mega rain events. So a mega rain event, I hope I have the conversion right, but is about 20 centimeters of rain over oh gosh, I'm gonna mess up the conversion. But it's over 100 square miles in a 24-hour period. The point being is these really massive rainfalls are happening more. That's how we evaluate the changes. But we had about 2 of those in the last 100 years, and in the last 20, we've had closer to 7. So a lot more frequent heavy rainfall. At the same time, we're seeing increasing amounts of droughts. So it's either really dry or really wet. Next slide, please. So we're talking about things getting wetter and warmer. For us, the way that we evaluate these changes and the risks to our transportation system really come down to 2 different things. One is using data. So we're using climate science, we're using weather and climate forecasts. We're evaluating our assets to understand where those risks are, and all using science and data. That's what's shown on the left. This is one of our 8 districts throughout the state of Minnesota. Green indicates pipes, culverts, and bridges that are in good condition. As you get to red, those are areas with known vulnerabilities. The other thing, though, that I think is important is on the right side, we talk about qualitative assessment or talking to people. The science and the data is great, but we don't have it everywhere. And I'm guessing many of you don't have really detailed, downscaled climate data everywhere. So we talk to people working on our roads to understand what are the risks that they see. Where's the flooding that is happening that might not close the road, but they're seeing it happening more there? Where's the slope? Where are they seeing dirt and debris coming down that might not close the road, but they need to scoop it up in order to move, letting traffic keep moving? And so those things are just, we know that they're gonna get more and more of those things. So we're talking to people and we're using data. Next slide. We talked a little bit of this already. So warmer and wetter, really this is about floods, right? So we're seeing slopes fail, like was talked about earlier. It sounds like that's similar to Indonesia. Slopes are failing. We're seeing more erosion as things get wetter. We're also seeing more flooding, right? We're seeing warmer winters. We're seeing invasive species. And this is something that we're really focused on that I think needs a lot more research to better understand. But as you get as the temperatures changes, right, as things get warmer, as the amount of water changes, we're seeing new pests, so new bugs coming in, new plants coming in that are taking over from what used to be there, right? And it's posing risks to our workers. Some of these plants and animals, like they can burn workers' skin. We have, there's problems with mosquito-borne illness. Other things that we haven't seen before that we're now seeing. The other one here, what's interesting is we're really focused on these things in red. So what this shows is the climate impacts on the left, the probability of those impacts being realized, and then this talks about sort of how it impacts the infrastructure. So we're focused on the higher probability impacts, but what's interesting is extreme heat. We don't think we're gonna have a lot of extreme heat impacts. However, last summer, we did have some extreme heat, and we had over 30 cases where our pavements exploded because it was so hot. And we had rail lines that were bent out of shape and couldn't be used because of the extreme heat. So even some of these low probability things are really happening and we're needing to prepare for it. Next slide, please. So talk a little bit about some of the strategies that we have. These are, when we say strategies, we're talking about the sort of big approaches that we're taking to address climate impacts to transportation. We talk about defending things. This is how do we prepare things that are already in place, like, right, to make them stronger, more resilient to climate change. We talk about accommodating, right? This is, so how do we make a pipe larger or a bridge larger so it can better accommodate more water going through it. We talk about retreat. This is the idea that some of our roads, they're damaged so frequently or they cost so much money to fix that we're gonna decide not to fix them anymore. And so what does that mean? There's a lot of big questions. And then some of the policy. One thing that we're seeing in Minnesota, the more heavy rainfall, It's causing more debris, so sticks and rocks and other things coming into the rivers, going into our pipes and our bridges, blocking them, and that's causing flooding, or that's causing our bridges to fail. So we need to go and we need to clean out those streams, clean out those culverts and pipes and bridges more frequently. Next slide. So I won't talk too much about this, but we have some specific actions. And I think the reason I included this is when we're thinking about climate resilience for our roads, it's important to focus on resilience, but we also want to understand what are those co-benefits. So what are the things that we can do to make our system more resilient to climate change that have other benefits too? Oops, so we can go back one. And just a couple of these, aquatic organism passage. This is how do we make our bridges bigger so they help wildlife pass in and out, at the same time making that bridge less likely to fail when a flood comes through, right? Or how do we use more resilient native plants or green infrastructure solutions? Things like living snow fences. I mentioned we have a lot of snow in Minnesota. It blows around. We spend $50 to $100 million a year clearing snow. Well, if we block that snow from getting on our roads to begin with, we can use plants to do that. It helps make our roads stronger, more resilient to climate change, and can reduce the need to plow the snow to allow traffic to continue. Next slide. Just a couple examples real quick. We talk about defending that infrastructure. One of the tools we use is armoring, right? And you can use either sort of high-tech, more expensive solutions, like these concrete blocks that prevent erosion, washing the road away. At the same time, you can use lower-cost solutions like straw and other things to prevent erosion. Next slide. We talked about retreat, right? We have situations right now where we have roads that are repeatedly damaged, particularly by flooding, and we're making the decision that we're no longer going to fix that road. And it's a hard thing to do, but it's so expensive to do it that we're just saying in some cases we can't do it any longer. Accommodating, this is an example of a road that it got so much debris in it, it clogged the pipe, it washed the road away. So we decided to come back when we repaired it with a bridge instead of a culvert, which is like a pipe going through there. So we're upsizing some of our assets. Next slide, please. This one I'd be happy to talk with folks if you're curious about, but what we're trying to emphasize here is that we don't have enough money to fix everything to make it resilient to climate change. So we have to make trade-offs, right? We can fix, if we spend a lot of money here, we can't spend it here. So what we're doing is we're looking at known vulnerabilities, and we're saying, well, what happens if in a low climate change scenario versus a high climate change scenario, how do our different fixes perform if we're defending or if we're accommodating or if we're retreating? And I think what I wanted to call out here, and the reason there's some underlines here, it says without social costs and with social costs. And I think when we think about climate change in Minnesota, we know that the impacts are not felt equally by everyone, right? If you have less money, you're more likely to live in an area that's prone to flooding, right? You're more likely to live on a slope that hasn't been reinforced. You're more likely to have impacts when we have these extreme weather events. So we're trying to include the social costs. What are the impacts to people to help make a decision about where we choose to invest in different ways? Next slide. So one of the sort of headline for this was about measuring performance. And that's the thing that we have a lot of data, we have a lot of information, we're making choices. But for us, we represent the people of Minnesota. And so it's really important that we're transparent and that we're trying to just build that public trust so they understand how we're making these choices, where we're choosing to invest, where we might be choosing to retreat or not invest. So we're really trying to develop some performance measures to say, this is our goal around climate resilience, and this is, how far we're progressing towards those goals. So we did a survey of US states around the country. Not all of them, about, I think, 13 responded to our request. You can see them here, to understand how other states are thinking about measuring climate resilience. And what we learned is that One, there's only about one state that's really doing it and using it to invest. So they're saying climate resilience is informing how and where we spend money for our transportation system. Many states like Minnesota, we're saying, we're making progress. We're continuing to look at this, and that this is important. And then a few states, they don't have any plans to do this. And I will just share briefly that I know PRC is apolitical, and that's very important. Climate change, it's encouraging to see so much discussion about climate change and thinking about solutions. There are a number of in the US, climate change and politics are sort of intertwined, and sometimes that influences sort of how states are thinking about climate resilience as well. But the other key here is that we recognize as states, and I'm sure you all do too, is that we don't have all the answers, and so partnerships are really important. So we're partnering with other states, we're partnering with the private sector, we're partnering with the universities to help us understand what are those vulnerabilities, right? How do we evaluate them, and how and where do we choose to invest to make things more resilient? Next slide. So here are the resilience measures that we've recently developed as of about 2 months ago. Really focused on flooding and warmer weather. I won't walk through all these, but I think the key is we're really looking at what are the ways that we can have those co-benefits. So green infrastructure solutions. How do we use more native plants that are more resistant to drought and extreme weather, right? How do we, and also support, less likely to cause erosion that damages the roadside, right? How do we evaluate our culverts, pipes, and bridges? Those are the big things, because again, flooding is really driving a lot of our decisions around climate resilience. And then how do we check to make sure that we're sharing with the public how much money we're spending on this stuff? So next slide, just a couple examples. So bridges failing, I'm sure many of you have similar examples from where you're working, your countries, but these are some of the the measurements that we're applying to these different scenarios that we're hoping will help to avoid them in the future. We have a bridge approach. You can see that it failed there because the approach underneath washed away. So we're using asset vulnerability score. So we're trying to evaluate all of our assets, understand how well they're performing, where are those risks. This is a scour critical bridge that was washed out as well. Thinking about where are those scour risks and how do we eliminate them. Next slide. Here's another example of a culvert. And in case, I don't know if culvert it translates directly, but this gives you an example of what a culvert is. It's a structure generally bigger than a pipe, smaller than a bridge, but you can see the risks here. Bigger flooding and rainfall events, right? Push through, they wash away the sides, make these small bridges more susceptible to climate change. So it's really important that we're capturing where these are, right? And our progress towards fixing them, because this could really be disastrous if this were to fail with that semi-truck, that lorry on top. Next slide. And finally, so in the US, last year, there was a big infrastructure package that our partners at the Federal Highway Administration asked us to talk about a little bit. There's new funding, about $1.5 billion per year, going to states to focus on climate resilience. So really excited about that. It's going to be a lot of opportunities for states to build up their programs, make more investments in climate resilience, both for planning, which we're learning is really important, to set up that structure within your agency, right, to understand who's doing what, where are those risks, where are those vulnerabilities, right? What are those trade-offs that you feel like you're going to be making, or that that you need to make? Thinking about things like evacuation routes, and some of that. There's a particular call out for coastal infrastructure as well. So I think that's it for me. Next slide. Thank you again. Very grateful for the hospitality. Would look forward to talking with any of you if you'd like to learn more following the presentation, and welcome your questions when we wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim, for this really great presentation. It provides considerable information on climate change resilience, research actions, and also performance measures to evaluate the progress towards resilient transport systems in the future. Thank you again, Tim, for this presentation. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Arie Setiadi Moerwanto, to the floor to provide a presentation on policy for mitigation and disaster adaptation, case study, earthquake, tsunami and liquefaction in Palu, Central Sulawesi. Arie is the head of Disaster Management Task Force in Palu, Ministry of Public Works and Housing, and was the former Director General of Highways. He obtained his master's degree in hydraulic engineering in IHE Delft and doctorate from University of Wollongong. Please join me in welcoming Arie. Arie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. In this occasion, I would like to share our lesson learned from the earthquake, tsunami, and liquefaction in Palu, Central Sulawesi. Next slide, please. To conduct the rehabilitation and reconstruction in Palu after this disaster, we conduct optimizing of the strategy by optimizing with the hard and soft infrastructure. We try to do that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the sorrow and also the challenges start on the Friday, 28th of September, 2018. Yeah. The epicenter of the earthquake is in Serenja area. We can see in the picture there. Sorry, I couldn't. Moment. Please help me to back slide in the first slide, please. Mundur yang mana? Oke, yang mundur yang mana? Next. Okay. Okay. The magnitude of the earthquake was 7.4 Richter scale. Okay, with the depth of the epicenter is 10 kilometers, so it is a very shallow earthquake. If we refer to the written period, actually it's only about 108 written period, years. Yeah. So it is far below our design standard of our major infrastructure. Next, please. And then it is the earthquake. How about the tsunami itself? We can see in the picture here, there is a multiple source of this tsunami. So it is why this happened, because it is the collapse of the sea trunks. Yeah, that's why it is surprisingly, because the golden time is only 4 minutes. Normally we have a golden time for about 15 minutes in Indonesia, but it is only 4 minutes. Okay? Actually, the heat of the tsunami itself is not so high. Yeah, it is only 1.5 millimeter, but after entering the shallow water, the Indonesian become about 3 to 4 meter. Yeah, in the certain area up to 6.5 meter. So the point is here is about the golden time, only 4 minutes. So it will become the design standard, for our tsunami resettlement structure in the future. Next. One interesting thing, what we learned from the tsunami at the Palu Bay. You can see there is we call it the Palu 4 bridge. The bridge is collapsed, but the approach of the bridge, you may see here in the right side in the picture, they can protect the area in this area. Even there is some doubt, why it may happen because the approach of the tsunami. But we can see, we can learn something. If we have some structure, we can protect that area. It is the second point that we learn from that tsunami. Next, please. You can see the damage. Palu 4 is collapsed. And also the Palu 1 bridge, and the upper structures move horizontally, so about 20 centimeter. Next. And also there is some landslide, and then crack on the pavement. It is, I think it is normal because the magnitude of the earthquake is big enough. Next, please. It is we learn again from the Palu. You may see the red color is the line of the fall. In the surface rupture zone, all the building collapse. But in the left and right of this line is safe. From this field condition, we learn if we can decide the line of the fault, so we make decide where is the safe line, the safe zone, and where is the other side is the danger zone. It is very interesting that we learn from Palu earthquake. Next, please. Another thing, we are all, I think, surprised. Normally, the liquefactions only going down, land subsidence. But in this case, there is a flowing liquefaction. The Kaili, the tribe, the local tribe of the people in this area, call it Nalodo. So we also try to introduce the same when we introduce lahar. Technical term of lahar, it is Indonesian term actually. But internationally, or people know about the lahar, and also we try also to introduce about nalodo. It is the flowing liquefaction. It is so big, the land can move. The houses can move up to 400 meters. And then there is of course the uppermost, there is a going down, land subsidence, and the lower part. It is an uphill. So the problem is, why this happen? We try, why we have to understand, by understand the phenomena, we can decide whether this area is safe or not safe. Next, please. There are several places, at least 4 places that we found the big nalodo, or we call it the liquefaction. We try to understand by doing the borelo, checking the groundwater and the slope. And there is some consistency about. First, about the groundwater level is very shallow, and then the confined aquifer exists in that area. And also, there is the a slope. Yeah. Actually, it is not perfectly horizontal. There is also the loose sandy soil. Yeah, it is very loose. Yeah. And then there is a low permeable cap layer. Yeah. So when there is an earthquake, the pore water pressure getting high, and then they cannot release to the upper part because there is a thin layer of the low permeable. Yeah, so it make water film. So all the strength is loose, and the earth can go down, yeah, sliding and flowing up to 400 meters. Yeah, this is a typical condition. Okay, when we know about this, so we conduct all this survey, yeah, in this area to see where the place that have a potency of the liquefaction. Next, please. Okay. Now we talk about the energy of the earthquake. There is a data that we have collect in this area. Okay, there is the east-west, the wave acceleration, and we have north and south. And we're a bit surprised because there is also a vertical direction of the earthquake. It's a bit new. So, why many buildings collapse? For example, here we have our standard, we have a risk map standard. In our standard for the Palu, the peak ground acceleration is 0.9 until 1 G. And if we see the occurring wave acceleration is only 2.81 gal. So the question is, why is collapse? Next, please. If we refer to the Palu 4 bridge, yeah, it is open for traffic in the years of 2012. Logically, it is designed based on the Indonesian standard of earthquake design. They are published in 2002. If we refer to that standard, yeah, the peak ground acceleration is only 0.2 G. Yeah. After knowing about the fault and etc., we update the standard. The new standard, yeah, it is 2017, yeah, published in 2017, is 0.8 G. Yeah, it is a huge increase. All the engineers don't believe it. It must be something wrong with the new standard. Yeah. But it has happened. Yeah. The Palu Bridge 4 was designed by using the SNI 1727 with the year 2002, with peak ground acceleration very low. Yeah, but we updated. Unfortunately, we didn't check the design of the Palu 4 bridge. Next, please. After the earthquake, we try to go to the field and see the line of the fault. Yeah. We identify, yeah, from Palu City up to Sigi district. This is about 30 kilometers. So it is clear. So by knowing the fault line, so we can decide which one is the dangerous area, which one is a relative safe area. So it is used for the resettlement plan. Next, please. Based on that, our survey result, about the potency of tsunami, the potency of liquefaction, and potency of the in the slip of the fault. So we make a new resettlement plan. So this is the dot area is our new resettlement plan. The basic criteria to choose the location is, of course, they must have access for the services like water, sanitation, and electricity, transportation, and this as much as possible close to the original location. Why? Because it is related with the employment opportunity. Yeah, we make a new resettlement plan because we have to relocate about 7,500 houses. Next, please. How about the nalodo or the liquefaction? If we know about the condition that may trigger the liquefaction during the earthquake, we can see there is 5 conditions. From the 5, I think the most logical, most easy to be conducted in the field is lowering the groundwater. Of course, we can make a compaction, but it is very expensive. In this huge area, it is impossible to do that. So in our countermeasure of the next possible condition is lowering the groundwater level. So we use the several release well and use the water for the irrigation, etc. We make a drainage system and drain it to the Palu River, and we have to dredge the Palu River to lower the groundwater in this area. Next, please. It is the result. There is the Gumbasa irrigation schemes. We make all the lining, because we don't want all the water intercept to the ground or become the groundwater. So we line to reduce the percolation from our irrigation canal. Next. Next, please. Go back. Mundur lagi, Mbak. We also conduct the groundwater modeling. We have to identify what is the origin or the water can intercept in our groundwater, because we want to lower it down, and where we have to put the release well, and we pump it to lower the groundwater and use it for the several aim, for example, for agriculture and also for the drinking water. Next, please. The next challenge is about debris flow. As you know, that in Palu area, the surrounding area consists of these celebes mollusca. It is a very loose sand. It is very dangerous, unstable during the serial rainfall. If we talk about the extreme weather, not only the number of, the maximum precipitation, but also the serial of this of the rainfall. Because if there is a serial of heavy rain, so the groundwater become high and become unstable. Actually, we have identified, okay, this area is dangerous, this is a potential hazard for the landslide, etc. But unfortunately, we cannot protect in very quick and very short time. Okay, Indonesia always say, Alhamdulillah, okay, there is a debris flow, but there is no fatalities, because we know, okay, you have to move, because there is a potency, if you can see in the lower part, there is the spreading of the debris, and in the right side, we have construct the Sabo Dam and also consolidation dam, so now the area is become safe. And also we design a special bridge because it's causeway bridge. So it can be inundated, but it is strong enough from the debris. It is in Salua River next. The same condition is in Poi River. If there is a potency of the landslide, there is a there is the settlement area, and in the left of your picture there, so we can predict where the debris will spread, etc. And then our prediction is correct, okay? And then we construct about the check dam, and then there is a special bridge in the right side. Yeah. It can be overtop by the debris, but after that we can clean, and then everything is safe. Next. How about the tsunami itself? Learning from the approach of the Palu 4 bridge, so we combine, we construct, it is no under tender, the elevated road, and then we combine it with also for the high tide, and then tsunami. We are not against with the tsunami because it is too hard, but we try to reduce the energy of the tsunami because the highest energy of the tsunami is the lower part. So the elevated road try to absorb the energy, and the head of the tsunami, the Indonesian, should be absorbed by the green open space. The basic principle is like that. And then, because the golden time is only 4 minutes, so along our coastal, we have to construct the tsunami shelter. So in 4 minutes, the people can go up to the second floor. Hopefully, the fatalities will not occur in this condition. Next. Okay, to close my presentation. We understand the lesson learned from the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in 2011. There will be no upper limit of the disaster hazard. Unavoidable intensive hazard as long as we live in a disaster-prone country. Unfortunately, Indonesia lies in the ring of fire. So the only thing that we can do is to minimize the damage and the losses. This is the approach that we implement in Palu area. Next. Lesson learned that we can adopt in this area. The first is periodically update the risk map and checking our design of the old structure. Once the risk map issued, we have to check all our building design, including road and bridges. And then be suspicious to the relative new sand deposit, where has engineering property, groundwater level is shallow, and SPT low, lower than 10, low permeable layer exists, forming confined aquifer, the slope is exists, and then there is a thin cap of quote-unquote impermeable layer. If we find that, there is a big potential of this sliding liquefaction. And then we try also to integrate between our road system uses this dike to reduce the energy of the tsunami. I would like to report to our distinguished DG. In Banten, we have also potential of tsunami. So if we can construct our toll road as an elevated dike, it may reduce the potential of the damage due to the tsunami. We have to integrate all our infrastructure. And then suburban. We have to construct many suburbs. Otherwise, our settlement, our infrastructure is in danger due to the debris flow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arie, for this very informative presentation. This makes the work that you're doing so important, particularly given the earthquake that occurred in the region yesterday. So once again, our thoughts are with all affected. I'd now like to invite questions for our two speakers. First, we'll take questions from the floor, and then we'll select questions from the virtual room through the chat function. Could I please have a show of hands of the first question to the room and to the speakers, and please state your name and also organisation. We have one question here. Please come to the floor.
Thank you very much for the chance. My name is Yusuf Maharani. I am a technical director from toll road, Semarang Demak toll road concession holder. I have a question for Mr. Tim Sexton. Referring your slides regarding the tactics to improve resilience, I read there is attractive of construction, which is you said we need sustainable pavements to prevent to improve resilience. My question is, would you please give us more explanations, specific explanation regarding the type of pavements, probably especially in Minnesota, it's okay, that could prevent for what type of disaster. So this is a disaster, this is the type of pavements, what type? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting question about sustainable pavements. And actually, the first presentation this morning, there was talk about in Indonesia, perhaps it's something that you're looking at here, to make pavements more resilient if there is flooding, or we call it sort of overtopping, there's water on the pavements more frequently. So things that we're looking at include solutions like porous asphalt pavements that have higher porosity to allow more rapid drainage. But there's some challenges with Minnesota because in the winter, those same pores allowing water to get in, when the water freezes, it can damage the pavement. So with asphalt, we're also looking at different base compositions and subgrade. So how do we design what's below the wearing surface on the top to make that more resilient? We also use concrete, and I think looking at different ways to make concrete, one, capture more carbon. So how do we use less carbon-intensive forms of concrete? But also thinking about other different places to use concrete where, say, there might be more flooding, because perhaps it's more resilient to being exposed to water if it's flooded. So a lot of it has to do with the wearing surface. Are we doing concrete or pavement? Or excuse me, concrete or asphalt or bitumen is what we call asphalt. but or the subgrade. So I can talk with you more about sort of some of those solutions, but we are looking at everything from the subgrade, the base, sort of, to the wearing surface on top. But a lot of it, again, has to do with flooding. The last thing I will say is, at the same time as we're thinking about more resilient to water, last summer I mentioned we had something like 30 places where the pavements actually exploded. Both the pavement and some of the barrier between the concrete barrier, it literally exploded because of the heat. So thinking differently about how to design pavements so they're more resilient to those extreme temperatures. I'm not a material scientist, but we have them on our team, and they're focused on a national effort right now with, I think, around 20 states to look at just that, how to make pavements more resilient to climate change and less carbon intensive so that they last longer and they have less carbon input. But I can share some information with you. I'll be happy to catch up with you after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. We have time for just one more question, and then we'll move across to the virtual room. Thank you. Please.
Dennis Ganendra from Arie AAA in Minkansao. Pak Arie, an excellent presentation and great strategies for climate resilience. But the worst case scenario at the end of the day is relocation, where the risk is just too high. So is that something that you've all had experience with, that you just finally give up and you just have to relocate communities or infrastructure?
Thank you for the response from you. As I mentioned, there is always a risk. And then I have an assignment to construct all the new network system. For the road, network system. To construct, also to reconstruct the building with the new standard, etc. I'm afraid it will attract people to live in, move into Palu. It put people in danger. But I do believe that living harmony with the risk potency and how to manage it. For example, there is some conflicting. No people cultivate paddy field in this area. And for the paddy field, we need water. Of course, everybody can say, why you allow them to plant paddy? Why don't you change it to corn or another plantation? But it deals with culture. We cannot do it, switch it in the short time, but we always have to deal with the culture. Okay, step by step, we change how they can survive and live in harmony with the risks. I hope that I can respond to your question correctly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arie. We have time just for one question from the virtual room, so I'll hand across to our co-moderators who will provide the question from the virtual room. Thank you.
Okay, Caroline, thank you. There is one question from Aditya Ananda for Mr. Tim Sexton. Can we show the question? First, is the adaptation only applied in Minnesota State, and what road status being treated? Is it federal roads or state roads? Second, each state may have different issue regarding climate change, but how to source the financing for this approach? From the government, through grant or private funding? Third question, wondering how the approach can be aligned with federal policy and maybe with other states, and also scaled down to city or country roads. Fourth, is there any social consideration as a part of the resilience tactics? For example, new road impacting nearby communities with flood, the construction impacting river. The road itself might not be directly be impacted, but local communities are. For Mr. Tim Sexton.
Thank you for all the questions. I think for the sake of time, could we go back to the questions on the screen? Thank you, Aditya. So regarding the question about is the adaptation only applied in Minnesota State and what road status being treated, federal or state roads, it's a very good question. States, there is some federal guidance with new money, with a recent new money at the federal level. I mentioned it was around $1.5 billion per year going to states. But in the U.S., there's a lot of differences between states. And so Minnesota will take a slightly different approach than some other states. The good thing about that is we're able to try new things and learn from each other. But there is also, I guess the downside is that there's maybe not complete consistency between states. And within states, there's also differences in how we work with federal roads and state roads that are managed by the State Department of Transportation compared to the local roads that are handled more by local governments, so cities and counties and other sort of units of government below the state. So there's not a lot of consistency, I think, is the short answer. But the positive is it leads to some innovation. The downside is that it can create some challenges with inconsistencies.
Thank you so much for these questions, and thank you again to our presenters for your informed contributions and also interesting presentations. I'd now like to conclude this session. So thank you again for your presentations, and all please join me in thanking the presenters. Terima kasih.
Thank you, the speakers and moderator, for the presentation. What a fruitful discussion. Let's give a big round of applause once again. Thank you. So next, we will have another discussion session, adapting to climate change risk and disaster management. The speakers for these sessions are Mr. Tomohiro Fujita from Public Works Research Institute of Japan, member of PRTC 1.4, and Mr. Tonny Agus Setiono from the Ministry of Transportation, and Mr. Handiana from the Ministry of Public Works and Housing. We also like to honorably invite to the podium our moderator, Mr. Tim Sexton. Mr. Tim Sexton is an Assistant Commissioner for Sustainability Planning and Program Management for the Minnesota Department of Transportation, United States of America. Please, Mr. Sexton, to lead the session.
Thank you, and I apologize. I'm expecting a couple of minutes between the sessions, so excuse me, my hands are full. Just give me one moment here to introduce the speakers. So, despite my slightly disheveled approach right now, I think this is going to be a very good session. We have two excellent speakers that will be joining us today, and I would like to start with introducing Tomohiro Fujita. Tomohiro is a young professional involved with PRC, TC 1.5, disaster management. He's a senior researcher of the Public Works Research Institute in Japan, or PWRI. PWRI was initially established in 1922 as a civil engineering laboratory of the Ministry of Home Affairs, taking an important part in social infrastructure development. Since then, for a century, it has contributed to the nation's growth as a core institute responsible for improving civil engineering. He has researched development of design and maintenance for roads, bridges, and earthworks. Please join me in welcoming Tomohiro to the stage.
Thank you for my introduction. Selamat siang. Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. And my name is Tomohiro Fujita. Today, I would like to give a presentation titled Road Bridge Scar Damage Due to Climate Change in Japan and Disaster Management Strategies. Next, please. This slide shows the climate change and social problem in Japan. The left figure shows the annual average number of rainfall events per, the left figure shows the change in the number of rainfall event of 50 millimeter or more per hour. The figure shows the annual average number of the rainfall event per 1,000 locations. It can be seen that 174 in the decade since 1976, and 251 since 2010, and increase of about 1.4 times. The right figure shows the change in the number of time that Japanese river reached the flood hazard level. It can be seen that 83 in 2014 and 403 in 2019, and increased about 5 times. With the increase in the occurrence of these heavy rains, the road closure due to bridge scar, like this figure, have become a social problem. Next, please. So this slide shows the bridge damage in Japan. The left figure shows the percentage of disaster type of bridge damage over the past 20 years. The storm and flood damage unexpectedly accounts for more 3/4 of all bridge damages. The right figure shows the number of bridge damage caused by storm and flood over the past 20 years. Although there are variations from year to year, it can be seen that the 148 in the average for the decade since 2000 and the 188 since 2010, and the increasing trend. Next, please. So this slide shows an example of bridge scar damage caused by Typhoon 2019, case 1. As shown in the left photo, thank you. The national road was closed due to settlement and inclination of bridge pier because of the bridge scar. As shown in the bottom right figure, the narrow spacing between the bridge pier and the high inhibition rate, this 10%, can be considered at least the cause of damage. And as shown in the top right figure, another possible cause is that the P6 and P7 pier were easily scarred over time as a result of the formation of sandbar in the river, the development of the green area on the sandbar, and the fixation of the river channel around P6 and 7. Next, please. So this slide presents an example of the response in the disaster management process for case 1. As a response to the national road closure, a toll road running roughly parallel to the national road was opened to traffic free of charge. So from this case study, it can be said that a dual road network is effective in ensuring road traffic function after a disaster. Next, please. This slide shows an example of recovery in the disaster management process for case 1. The emergency restoration involved removing the sunken pier, P6, and the 8 pier after changing the river channel, and then the spanning the reinforced P5 pier and 8 abutment with a temporary long span beam. It took 1 year to complete this emergency restoration. For the main restoration, a new bridge was constructed on the downstream side of the damaged bridge, as shown in the left figure. The restoration took 2.5 years to complete. It took a very, very long time to restore traffic function of the damaged national route. Next, please. So this slide shows an example of bridge damage caused by heavy rain in 2021. Case 2. As shown in the left photo, the national route was closed due to the settlement and inclination of the bridge pier caused by bridge scar. P4 pier side was outside of the carved river channel, and on the path, the revetment retaining wall next to the P4 pier was damaged due to scar. So we believe that P4 pier was vulnerable to scar. And as shown in the upper right figure and the right lower photo, the proximity of the repaired revetment retaining wall to the P4 pier is also considered to be the cause of the damages. So this slide shows an example of the recovery in the disaster management process for case 2. In the emergency restoration, a temporary portable bridge was used to restore the traffic function of the damaged national route. So it took about 2 months. So thanks to the use of the portable bridge, it was earlier than case 1. Next, please. So this slide shows the example of bridge scar, bridge damage caused by heavy rainfall, 2021. Case 3. As shown in the photo above, the riverbed around the P1 pier settled by about 5 meters, and the city-managed road was closed for the safety check investigation. As a result of the investigation, it was found that the footing was partially exposed to the underside due to the sunken of the riverbed. But the bridge had no damage. As shown in the right figure, The cause of the sunken river was collapse of a 5-meter high retaining wall downstream, as shown in the right figure. This slide shows the last example of the recovery in the disaster management process for case 3. The emergency restoration involved building a 5-meter high retaining wall, again downstream to backfill the riverbed to its original height. 5 days after the disaster, the road closure was lifted while monitoring was conducted in parallel with the restoration work. So this slide shows the vision presented by the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transportation, and Tourism in Japan. The first is related to the preparedness in the disaster management process. A disaster-resistant highway network will ensure an uninterrupted flow of people and logistics, logistics to the disaster area, and minimize the loss of lives and the economy in the event of an increasing severe and widespread disaster. The specific target indicates that the emergency vehicle should be able to pass through within 1 day after a disaster strike, and the general vehicle within 1 week. When it comes to the bridge scour, it may be effective to develop a dual road network and prepare temporary bridge based on the case studies. Next, please. The second vision related to the mitigation in the disaster management process. It indicates that the goal is to ensure the sustainable function of the road network through preventative maintenance that is made more efficient and sophisticated through the introduction of new technology. When it comes to the bridge scour, it is expected that UAV equipped with a green laser will be used to detect change in the riverbed and early detect and response to symptoms of scour. Next, please. So this shows a summary. In Japan, road bridges have been frequently damaged by scour and road closure for long periods of time due to an increase in the number of heavy rainfall disasters in recent years. And a response is required. And in recent cases of responding to road closure due to scour damage, there have been examples where the development of dual network and the preparation of emergency portable bridge have contributed to ensuring effective post-disaster road traffic function. The following 2 visions are indicated from Japanese ministry: roads that prevent people and their livelihoods from disaster. Second, preventative maintenance using new technology. In order to achieve this vision, it is important to continue to share not only good, but also bad case study on disaster response. Next. So, thank you for your attention. Terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you, Tomohiro. You can please stay up here and join us for the next presentation. And I apologize for looking at my phone here, but our next presenter was able to join us, and so his biography is not part of. Thank you. So, our next presenter, as part of the session on adapting to climate change, risks, and disaster management, about policy development for zero-emission transportation modes, Mr. Suharto will be represented today by Tonny Agus Setiono. Tonny Agus Setiono is the head of Subdirectorate for Urban Transport, of Road Transport, Directorate General of Land Transportation, Ministry of Transportation, sorry, Tony, of the Republic of Indonesia. He was born in Bandung on the 21st of August, 1971, and obtained a bachelor's degree in 1994 from the Traffic Academy in Bekasi, and continued his master's degree in transportation from Gajah Mada University. He has served as head of the Land Transportation Management Center for Region 11 of East Java Province, and in April 2022 became head of the Urban Transport Subdirectorate. So during his tenure as head of Urban Transport Subdirectorate, Tonny promoted bus rapid transit in various cities in Indonesia. He also encourages the development of environmentally friendly transportation and builds a transportation network between stakeholders at the regional level. Please welcome Tonny.
Thank you very much, moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting us to this event from Ministry of Public Works and Housing, and also yang terhormat Pak Prof. ATM, my lecturer in Gajah Mada University. It is a great pleasure for me to be a part of this event, and Mr. Suharto, as my Director of Road Transportation, apologized that he cannot come to this event. Therefore, he asked me to give this presentation this morning. What I'd like to present for today is about policy development for zero-emission transportation modes. Next slide, please. So, Indonesia demonstrated its commitment to tackle climate change by ratifying the Paris Agreement in April 2016 through Law Number 16 of 2016. In later developed the nationally determined contribution, or NDC, to reduce emission by 20% domestically and by a further 40% with international support by 2030. Indonesia then created the NDC mitigation roadmap in 2019 and 2020. The document was then updated in 2021 to respond to the Paris Agreement and the established law. Indonesia submits a long-term strategy for low carbon and climate resilience 2050, which aims to contribute to global goals and to achieve national development objective, taking into consideration the balance between emission reduction, economic growth, justice, and climate resilience development. The NDC then enhanced an Indonesia net zero emission roadmap created in 2022. Next slide, please. Here's some of the following Indonesia to support the regulation to support the reduce of greenhouse gas emission from the Paris Agreement National Energy Plan to electric vehicle regulation. Next slide, please. So these are the following net zero emission for transport subsector. For the new law, we have number 8, electrification in ports or electric vessel for shorter distances and or hybrid vessels. And we also have the regulation for the use of electric vehicle on the road. So next slide, please. These are the mitigation action plan in the transportation subsector includes the implementing climate change mitigation action in the transportation sector to support greenhouse gas emission, including the implementation of BRT. Full BRT we will introduce in Bandung and Medan. Electric public transport we will introduce in Bandung, Surabaya, and then Pasar Bari. And then we also support with the ITS or Intelligent Transport System, green fuel, and mass rapid transit in 10 cities in Indonesia. So next slide, please. So this slide, we want to talk about the reformation of transit system for bus rapid transit in 10 cities in Indonesia. Next slide, please. As we know, here is the statement of our President of Republic of Indonesia that he asked the local government to use local budget to reduce inflation growth due to fuel oil increasing. Governments with all governors, region, and mayor need to make decision. The inflation must be covered from the local budget, therefore, it will reduce the inflation of goods and services. This is the statement of our president. So this slide, we have a program called Buy the Service. So by this program, we buy the service from the operator and we implement it in 10 cities in Indonesia. So next slide, please. So this is the performance of our bus mass transit in 10 cities. For in 27th of October, we already 35 million passengers. 35 million passengers. We have 49 corridors, 82 buses with the 140 feeders. Feeders like Angkot, a small public transport. And then this we have 65 in average of load factor for all 10 cities. And we have glad that they are shifting from two-wheelers about 62%, but we want to still increase the shifting from the car. Until now, we still have 5%, still 5%, still low than two-wheeler vehicles, yeah, in our 10 cities program bus mass transit. Next slide, please. So, in order to strengthen the infrastructure to support economic development and basic services, our ministry, with some development partners, will also develop BRT system in 6 metropolitan areas, including Jakarta, Bandung, Medan, Surabaya, and Semarang, and also Makassar. Currently, we will still focus on developing BRT in Bandung and Medan, while other cities will follow suit. BRT development will be carried out starting from institutional capacity building, procurement of facilities and operation, as well as BRT infrastructure development. So we have a loan from World Bank to develop the BRT in Bandung and Medan. And then after Bandung and Medan, we will continue to other cities in Indonesia. So next slide, please. So this is the moving to the next point. Both of the projects are about buses, not LRT, not the train, because we knew that The BRT is efficient than rail. So why we choose Medan, Bandung, and other cities to use BRT to increasing the service for public transportation. Next slide, please. So this is the implementation of electric buses. As I mentioned before, next slide, please. We want to implementation of zero emission through e-mobility and technology platform. So we have 3 cities which implementing for the electric vehicle, electric buses. We have Bandung for 1 corridor, and we have Surabaya for 2 corridors, and also we have in Denpasar 1 corridor. So the bus will be the same as the regular bus, but different with they use electric. So will be operate in middle of December this year. So next slide, please. So the target implementation of electricity base for urban mass transport will be start with the BTS, yeah, by the service, not the Korean group, yeah, sorry. This is the same with the Korean group, BTS, by the service pilot project in Bandung and Medan in 2023. The system will be upgraded to the fuel BRT project in 2025 with the use of an electric bus system. In 2026 the electric public transport network in 10 provinces will be developed from IC buses into electric buses. In 2028 and 2029, there will be a collaboration with the local government to convert electric buses, and then the target in 2030 is 90% of mass transportation is based on electricity in 34 provinces in Indonesia. So this is our target for electric vehicle. The target implementation of electricity based on for urban mass transport will also be developed on tourism destination in 11 national tourism strategic area. The electrification target for urban mass transport is in 2025. So next slide, please. The challenges for implementation of electric buses is the cost of the investment price of the buses. We knew that the electric bus, the price is higher than diesel buses. There is also an investment requirement for BRT bus charging facility. So we have a challenge for provide the bus charging in every cities. So next slide, please. So this slide it will inform the development of the ITS or Intelligent Transport System to support our public transportation program. So next slide, please. So we have a grand design of ITS of Indonesia. We have 11 technology to support reducing of the greenhouse gas in Indonesia. Next slide, please. So the main advantage of implementing the ITS in urban area are reduce congestion, and then improve of road safety, reduce pollution by improved traffic flows, reduce traffic pollution from the mode shiftings, and better infrastructure financing by funding service and maintenance of existing infrastructure and raises money from new infrastructure project. Next slide, please. The subsystem is also used for the intelligent transport system with the fixed communication point to fixed point or fiber optic system. The system includes the control center, communication between travelers, and also communication with RFID, this is the SRC or GNSS. So next slide, please. These are the grand design of ITS. We divide into two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Next slide, please. So, well, thank you. This brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you will have gained an insight into policy development for zero emission transportation modes. Thank you for your attention. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Tony. That was excellent. And it's a good reminder that when we talk about resilience, it's both adapting to climate change, but also trying to prevent more emissions going into the atmosphere. Before we open it up to questions, I would also like to Handiana was also a contributor to the presentation. Handiana is the head of Road and Bridge Safety and Security Subdirectorate and Directorate General of Highways in the Ministry of Public Works and Housing in Indonesia. We do have some time for questions. If there's any questions in the room, we could start with those. Just a reminder, if you could please introduce yourself and your organization and then suggest the question. So do we have any questions for the two presenters in the room? Yes. If you could please come up to the microphone.
Good afternoon, team. I'm Michael from Asratol Cipali. Asratol Cipali is a concession holder of Cipali Toll Road, 116 kilometer long toll road in Java. My question is for Tomohiro session, not specifically in score damage, but road bridge damage. We have 112 bridges in Cipali, and as we know that Indonesia last night experienced an earthquake, and we currently conducting a bridge inspection. My question is where do we start? What method of inspection the best that we do? I mean maybe the method of inspection, the equipment we need, and maybe the area we inspect, like maybe the abutment or the pier, or yeah. I think you get my question already.
So thank you very much. It's very good question. It's very difficult, but for us, at first, we have the visual inspection. We detect the crack and displacement and some damage of the slope. At first, that's visual inspection. And next, we have the monitoring of the displacement and some inclination after having the load. For example, after running the car, we detect the displacement or not. So this is the general survey method for us. But maybe there are a lot of methods. For example, we survey the natural frequency of the bridge is one of the survey method. Yes. Is correct? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomohiro. Are there any other questions in the room before we see if there are questions online? If anyone in the room has an additional question, please, I welcome you to come up to the microphone, but we will, while we're waiting, we'll see if there are any questions from the co-moderators. Do you know are there any questions from the virtual audience?
Yes, one question. Still same from Aditya Ananda. The question is taking example of Bromo area in particular. It is famous with exploring Bromo with the jeep, but on the other side, it is heavy fossil fuel-driven vehicle. Is that possible to have a buyback policy to the jeep owners and replace the vehicles with electric vehicles, Pak Tonny? This question to Pak Tonny. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the questions. Very good question. Yeah, for example, in Bromo we have jeeps. Yeah, to take tourists from below to the above. So for the electric vehicles, it's depending on the slope. Yes, if too high, I think percentage is very high. I think it's not. We cannot use the electric vehicles. Yeah, it's very. I don't think it's. Yeah, for the slope is very important. We can see the slope for climbing the mountain. Yeah, this is very very difficult to electric vehicles. Yeah, but maybe for the not the yeah, the normal roads, I think we can use electric vehicle. But for the slope, very percent, it's very difficult to climb electric vehicle to get above. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I think there's one more part of that question about a buyback. There was a co-moderators. Could we put that question back up, please? I think there was. It was. We can buy and then we sell. I think I believe the question had something to do with could you buy people's internal combustion engine vehicles, buy it back from them and sell them an electric vehicle? Yes.
We buy the existing vehicles and then change to the electric vehicles. That it's maybe that he means about the buyback. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Well, we have just a few minutes left, so I have maybe a question to the presenters, but I, again, continue to encourage anyone to come up to the microphones if you have additional questions. So I guess for Tomohiro, the case of the case number 2 with the bridge scour, and I may have missed this, but you know, given the presentation we had just the session before this was talking about some of the changing standards and how it impacted the vulnerability of infrastructure to, in that case, it was earthquakes. Do you have any thoughts about some of the bridges that you've seen, and if the updated standards would make those more resilient to climate threats?
So Japan is developing the new standard of the bridge, but that's kind of the for the resilience. But assuming is very difficult. For example, we don't predict the displacement of the bridge, and so it's very difficult. But we apply that kind of resilience to the bridge design. Yes.
Thank you. And Tony, if I heard you right, it looks like the bus rapid transit, or BRT, electric BRT, which is really exciting to bring to Indonesia. It looked like you were bringing that to some of the tourist areas. But there was also some challenges with bringing the electricity needed to charge those buses to some of those areas. Do you have any thoughts about sort of why you were targeting those locations for the electric bus rapid transit, versus maybe some urban areas where there might be more electric capacity, or it might be less expensive to provide the charging for those new buses?
Yes, thank you. So we have a targeting to implement the electric vehicles, not only in urban areas, but also in tourism destination. But we will still looking for the tourism side, to implement the electric buses. So we still looking for because we knew that the technology of the electric vehicles, depending of the slopes probably, and then for the charging station, and then for the capacity in that area. So we still we have a study to look for which tourism site will implementing the electric bus.
Great. I think that will. Okay. Thank you both very much for those presentations. It was very informative. Really, really appreciate it. If we could please join me in giving a round of applause to our presenters. Thank you. Okay, that ends this session. I believe we are being very adaptive today in terms of the changing schedule, but I believe, are we turning this over to the keynote? Okay, terrific, thank you.
Thank you, all the speakers and moderator for this session. Very good presentation and great discussion. Thank you, Mr. Tim Sexton. Okay, now we will have the next agenda of keynote speech session by Professor Andrew Quinn, Professor of Climate Adaptation at University of Birmingham, UK, who joined us online through Zoom meeting. And then the keynote speech will be followed by Q&A session. So we would like to invite to the stage our moderator, Mr. Yusuf Adinegoro, PhD. Mr. Yusuf is from the Ministry of Public Works and Housing of the Republic of Indonesia. Mr. Yusuf has been involved in a number of projects in roads and bridges in Jakarta, West Java, and Yogyakarta. And currently he's doing almost 2 kilometers of bridge design in Yogyakarta that focus on how to create a bridge that is sustainable and also resilient to disaster risk. So please, Mr. Yusuf, to lead this session.
Okay, thank you for introducing me. Wow, it seems still in full house. It's fantastic. Okay, before we start, just want to check whether all the setting has been worked properly. Is it Professor Andrew Quinn is online already?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
All good?
Thank you.
Okay, just want to remind us a little bit for our keynote discussion. There will be 30 minutes, probably like 20 minutes for the presentation, and I also invite two questions for the online and offline participants. So, good afternoon to everyone here. Okay, welcome to the keynote session. It's been an honor for me to moderate this discussion of this session, which part of the PIAC, International Seminar on Climate Change, Resilience and Disaster Management for Roads. Let me arise the topic of today. On 15th November 2022, just recently announced that global population has been reached at 1 billion people. And the United Nations also announced in their report that half of the Earth population inhabits the urban area, and it will double at the end of 2050. It suggests that we are getting rely heavily on our built environment that we create. Probably we also rely on the infrastructure that we occurred itself. It also means that there will be a surge of energy demand for the future needs. Nevertheless, a number of studies have been identified that there are increasing of disaster risk as a consequence, the increasing of the non-renewable energy use. A recent study also confirmed that the events such as extreme weather, landslide, wildfires that occur in many parts of the world were related to climate change. Evidence also shows that such events not only have been harmed our basic life function, but also have been disrupted the operation of main critical infrastructures, including the transport network services. A greater action to tackle this issue have been undertaken nationally and internationally, such as R&D in technology advancement to help mitigate the risk of disaster, to reduce fossil fuel dependency, or to increase government awareness on the effect of unsustainable construction practices in infrastructure sector, as probably we also heard about some of them at a part of the morning session. However, due to its complexity, I believe there remains major gaps in the current knowledge. Therefore, among us, we already have an expert excellent in this field with a global reputation who joined us virtually, Professor Andrew Quinn. He will explain more how his attempt to fill the gaps in the knowledge and put all the puzzle together to his comprehensive study. He also provided a recommendation on how to creating a more resilient transport infrastructure that not only adapt to climate change, but also sustainable. Ladies and gentlemen, first, I'd like to read a brief introduction of our keynote speaker, Professor Andrew Quinn. He's a professor of civil engineering and environmental science from University of Birmingham. Professor Quinn's research interests cover the broad field of resilience to environmental factors, such climate change, extreme weather events, and field of transport system, including pollution and air quality issues. Professor Quinn also supervisor for a number of PhD students and master students and have collectively published over 20 journal and conference papers. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, now allow me to welcome Professor Andrew Quinn to present his study on supporting adaptation for transportation resilience. Screen is yours.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I hope that you can see my slides. So I would like to talk today a bit about supporting adaptation for transport resilience. And first of all, I'd like to take a view of the global challenge that we face. So you will undoubtedly be familiar with this type of graph, which shows the different scenarios for future climate temperature change. And we can see from this that even if agreements like the COP parties are successful in changing our carbon emissions, we still have to face significant climate change over the near and mid-term. And this is a challenge for our infrastructure and for our societies to deal with. And it's not just the temperature which will change, but we also see a changing pattern of precipitation, with increases in global precipitation and increases in the intensity of that precipitation. We also begin to see a change in ice coverage at the poles, which of course is particularly significant for permafrost, for countries which have frozen landscapes and on which transport infrastructure is based on permafrost landscapes. And of course, we also see a rapidly changing global mean sea level, which is outstripping all of the predictions at the current time. And this, of course, is very significant for small island nations and for large areas of coastline and for many of our cities. So even if we agree changes to our global carbon emissions, we still must adapt to climate change. And these changes are not just in the average values, but it is also very much in the extreme values, where this will cause us significant challenges for our infrastructure and our society. So we already see extremes of temperature, which are 3 to 5 times more likely than they were in the past. And as we heard from the previous speaker about in Japan, heavy rainfall events are now 1.3 to 1.5 times more likely than they were in the past. And these kinds of heavy rain events cause significant problems for structures such as bridges, which he was speaking about. And this change has a dramatic effect on the lives and the capabilities of societies and people around the world. So we already see in just the previous year great events which have caused massive fires and floods in different parts of the world and significant deaths in different areas of the world. And it is the scientific conclusion that these are caused by climate change and that these are man-made effects. So it is absolutely imperative that we adapt our systems and our society to cope with these changing conditions in order to save lives and the livelihoods of so many people. Because not only is it those who are caused to die in these events, but for every person who is killed, there are 10,000 people who are affected by these events. And therefore, we need to deal with these challenges through adaptation of our transport systems. And in particular, we see some areas which are very vulnerable to changing events like heavy rainfall and flooding and sea level rise. And so this is a recent study which has looked at various highly populated river deltas around the world, in India, in Thailand, in Vietnam, and so on. And you can see that these high density areas, high population density areas, are very vulnerable to sea level rise. And this causes a massive challenge for our adaptation. And this particular paper predicts that by 2100, with a 1 meter sea level rise, even if there were no change in the population, then we would have over 400 million people at risk from these rising sea levels. And of course, we do imagine that there will be a population growth, and this may double that figure of people who are at risk in these situations. So it is very significant. And of course, on top of the sea level rise, we also have to deal with storm surges. And these storm surges will be massively destructive to coastal infrastructure. And this is, again, a significant challenge to how we build more resilient transport networks. So if we look at the global picture, we see that already there is observable increases in extreme temperatures. And this map of the world shows that no matter which region we are in, we see a high confidence that there are observable changes due to climate. And if we look forward into the future, we see the pattern of these changes continuing. So again, we have many of the same areas which are at risk of increased temperatures again. And this, of course, increases risks of wildfires and of droughts, which are extremely disruptive. If we turn our attention to intense rainfall events, we see a similar pattern. We see increases in heavy rainfall events across large parts of the world. And we already have of the observed data from many of the previous studies, which show us the damage that these can do to infrastructure. And again, if we consider the future pattern of heavy rainfall and precipitation, then we see that many of these same areas will continue to have additional flooding risks associated with them. So on a global scale, we see that the types of disasters which have been mentioned in the previous speakers can happen, and they can happen anywhere in the world. And this, again, is just a map of 1 year's worth of disasters. And the table on the right-hand side shows just simply for the European part of this the map, that many of these events are flood events and storm events. And so this is a particular risk to every part of the world, and it's important that all parts of the world consider this risk and how to mitigate the risks associated with climate change. Of course, the key to this is, as the previous speakers have said, it needs addressing the vulnerability of the different areas. And this can be the vulnerability of the people who live in those areas, but it can also be the vulnerability of the infrastructure systems which serve them. And it is particularly distressing to see that many of these areas are unable to adapt because of a lack of understanding or a lack of communication and infrastructure to be able to react to these kind of increasing risks. And of course, poverty plays a great role in this challenge, because without the means to survive, people are challenged to adapt and to build the capacity that is needed in order to respond and plan for the growing emergencies. So we have done a study recently in conjunction with our colleagues at TRL under the UK aid programme, looking at supporting adaptation for transport resilience, particularly in low-income countries in Africa and South Asia. And we have focused on this in order to try and improve the transport resilience for these different areas. And this can be at local level or at regional level or at national level. We aim to increase the resilience of road and rail and urban transport infrastructure from the impacts of climate change, and to work with both the government agencies and also with private providers. And we have looked at different research questions around the changing weather patterns and the information that is available to different organizations, the scale and the cost of the disruptions that are faced, and the guidance, coordination, and impact that the regulations in different areas can have. And this is in order to try and build the capacity and the financing of projects within those areas. What we have found during this study is that national adaptation plans, which are the government plans for dealing with climate change, which go hand in hand with the national challenges for greenhouse gas emissions, the national adaptation plans are improving over time. However, only some of these national adaptation plans in different countries actually address the transportation system. The assessments of national and regional vulnerability are often quite good, but there are very great capability gaps in implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the adaptation plans that have been produced. Here we see a map of recent adaptation plan development, and you will see that across Africa and much of South Asia, there is an improvement in adaptation plans. Pardon me. The darker color shows a national adaptation plan has been drawn up, and the paler colors show national adaptation plans in preparation. Moving on from the plans, we also evaluated the many tools that are available. Over 35 different adaptation tools for planning and implementation have been considered. And using a system of criteria, we evaluated these to see how effective they were in terms of their credibility, their translation, and their communication for different user groups in developing countries. What we found is that there are many tools and it's very difficult for users to pick the most suitable tool. And some of them better, more effective tools only support certain parts of the adaptation planning process. And therefore it's necessary for users to develop a group of tools which complement each other in their particular country. Some of the best tools are at a very local scale, and therefore they require significant amounts of skill and resources and information about the local area in order to be used most effectively. And most of the tools also need to be adapted for the capabilities and knowledge that are available within low-income countries, where data may not be as widely available as it is in other places. We also conducted a large number of interviews with stakeholders in low and middle income countries across the region, and we asked them about their climate awareness and also about the risks that they faced and what were their highest priority issues. And it will be no surprise to understand that many of the flood impacts were the most recognized and considered to be the most important. However, much of the focus was still on emergency management in the current period, rather than thinking about the future period and the ways in which climate might change the frequency of the risks to these kind of hazards. And therefore, it's also, in order to get this future understanding, it's necessary to consider the design specifications for different types of infrastructure. But many of these design specifications still rely on historical data about the climate. And it's vital that this understanding be updated for the future climate so that these design specifications can keep pace with the changing pattern of weather. So increasing the awareness of climate change and the need for improving infrastructure, particularly transport infrastructure, is something that we see as a priority. In terms of the data that's available, we need, again, to move beyond the average values that people are currently looking at, but also consider the extreme values, which are the greatest risk to the infrastructure systems and to the people who use them. COVID has caused a barrier, particularly a barrier in terms of available funding because of responding to the pandemic emergency. We also need to consider the impacts on biodiversity, and the strongest thing that we can achieve is if we work together and develop the coordination between different ministries and departments in order that there can be a linked up approach to dealing with climate change adaptation. So our recommendations in terms of improving transport resilience are to improve the government coordination, thinking both about national government, regional government, and also to local providers who might be private sector providers, thinking about linking them together so that they can support and coordinate their efforts, which will be more effective in dealing with these longer term challenges. We do need to build capacity and awareness through meetings like this and through contacts in these particular areas to develop climate knowledge, to develop the transport data, the financial resources, and the project management which is needed in order to get adaptation built into every project and to have every project considered in terms of its disaster risk reduction. And we want to have full stakeholder engagement with local communities, with the private sector, and with all of the different public sector bodies who work together to provide resilient transport. And the importance of this is underlined by the fact that the Sustainable Development Goals that are underpinned by transport are quite wide-ranging. So they range and include education and health and poverty. If we can improve the transport system and make it more resilient, then we can then tackle many of the other challenges that we face due to climate change and a growing population. So it is of vital primary importance that we deal with transport systems in terms of our adaptation response. So what we have done is put together a policy guide for stakeholders in the transport industry. We have looked very carefully at the resources that are available, and we have signposted to different organizations where there might be information or resources available, financial resources available. So for example, the regional development banks. We provide case studies and examples of the materials that can be used and suggestions for who should lead on each particular area of adaptation. The key terms are explained, and there are plans for engagement so that stakeholders can begin to organize into groups which can then begin to discuss and tackle these kind of problems in a practical way. And this is a vital part of sustainable development and disaster risk reduction. And it's very important, it's critically important that we put this adaptation agenda on an equal footing with carbon emissions reduction so that we can build a better resilient development across all of the different areas of society. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I provide on the slide 2 links. One is to our State of Knowledge report, which summarizes all of the available information. And the second link is to the policy guide on transport resilience, some elements of which I've just outlined to you. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you again, Professor Andrew Quinn, for your great presentation. I guess I suppose that this is a very significant study you've been done. I can see the impact of the study, the material that you distributed to organizations. I think it's really wonderful. But a quick recap. The study has developed policy guidance that calls for greater coordination nationally and internationally to develop practical, relevant, and usable data, tools, advice, and assistance toward building climate resilient transport in low-income countries in particular, but we can use as well in under a level of income country to enable sustainable development. Okay, as I mentioned earlier that we have 2 parts of the session. The first part we've done for the presentation. So the next part of discussion is for the Q&A. I invite one question from the room. Anyone? Oh, okay. Do you mind if you move forward a little bit? There's a microphone in front of us.
Can I see Professor Quinn? I cannot see Professor Quinn.
I can hear you.
Hello, Professor Quinn, can you hear me?
Hello? Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hello, Prof. Quinn.
Yes, I can hear you.
Happy day. My name is Natalia. I'm from the implementation unit of Pavement and Environment, Highway, Director General of Highways. Thank you for your great presentation. Unfortunately, you didn't conduct your study in our country, in Indonesia, but it's okay. Okay, my question is, all of your recommendations are applicable to implement in all of those countries, or you have any differentiation between low-income countries, developed countries, and developing countries? Thank you.
Thank you.
My question?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. We have tried to make sure that the recommendations are applicable to all countries, but we note the increasing difficulty of implementation in different countries. One of the key elements of the recommendations is to conduct a risk assessment that is appropriate to each country. So hopefully the recommendations are applicable to all countries, and it is the implementation which can take account of the local variation in risks.
Is it answer your question? Okay. Probably we can move to online question. I have Adib as the... Is there any question from the online side?
No question from...
Okay, probably I will open one more question from the room. Anyone?
I'm conscious that people probably want to go to lunch.
Probably I will invite from Pa Yongki. Do you have a question for good? Or the Board of Director for the Ministry of Public Works? Anyone want to raise a question? Tim, do you have a question? Oh, okay. That's good.
Thank you very much for the opportunities. My name is Francisca. I'm from Road Administrator or Agencies of Bengkulu, BPJN Bengkulu. Thank you very much for all of your presentations, sir. I want to tell you and the Ministry of Public Works and Housing that my region, Bengkulu, is full of disaster. There are floods and slope erosion and a lot of, what can I say, longsor, landsliding, yes. So I guess I'm interested in what you say, 2 points. One, the Ministry of Public Works must have cooperation with the university, just like what you did. Because the Ministry of Public Works has too much to do. We don't have time to research, just doing the regular job duties. So I guess this is special duties for the university because they always doing research, and we needed that. And then the second, I want to underline, we need to change our specification, just like what you said. Because our specification just focus on the layer, not the subgrade. We lay the road on the top of the subgrade. Subgrade are very different in all areas of Indonesia. So maybe I think in the planning or design, we can more focus on environment, the road environment, not only the road, but the road environment. Maybe just like what Mr. Arie said about liquefaction and earthquake, low water table, shallow water table. We never examine water table when we doing reconstruction or doing whatever in roads. We never know where is the water table, especially for rehabilitation. We never see that. We just, if the road is break, we build the new construction on the top of the subgrade, just like that. And then,
probably you can make it very quick.
Yes.
So I get a point.
I would like to represent my region, Bengkulu. We have so many roads
Yes,
broke,
yes.
and we cannot fix it because we don't have any fund and money.
Okay.
That's all I can say, and thank you very much for the time. Thank you for hearing.
Really appreciate for
Thank
the
you very
question.
much.
Yes, thank you. So we have two questions. You can answer the question. You can start answering the question, Professor Dendru.
So I think that it's vitally important that regional areas are linked up with national programs and with national and international funding for development, and that sustainable development which considers fully the needs of the community, but also the ways in which to build resilient infrastructure, disaster resilient infrastructure. And so it's vital that these things do go hand in hand with each other. And so the guidelines, the policy recommendations include things like sources of funding and how to build stakeholder groups that can actually begin to address these issues with a local voice as well as a national voice. Thank you.
Probably for the second question is about how in some of the practices here we only focus on the pavement, but not look at the other part of the road elements. What do you think about that? Is there any relationship? I mean, between the design and the end of the effect of the climate change, something like that?
Absolutely, and understanding those relationships is obviously something where we do need the scientific input and pardon me, the detail in some of the previous speakers' presentations about specific pieces of infrastructure, like the subgrid, for example. But it's also vital that we understand the local geology. And so sometimes, for example, the water ministry may understand the underlying geology better than the transport ministry. And therefore, it's very important that this understanding is linked up and that people are working from the best available information. And that where necessary, we invest in understanding the geology and the surface conditions, as well as just the pavement. And therefore we can build something which is more resilient overall throughout all of the different regions.
Okay, fantastic. Probably we've done with the last, for the keynote session. Thank you again, Professor Andrew Quinn, for your time and for a great presentation. Please give applause for Professor Andrew Quinn. And thank you. As a reminder that we'll be seeing you again in 1 hour, probably after lunch break. So you all later, thank you very much. Over to MC. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Andrew Quinn from University of Birmingham, UK, and Mr. Yusuf Adinegoro, PhD, for this session. May I have a big applause for Professor Quinn and Mr. Yusuf? Okay, well now, after a long session of discussion, finally we will have a lunch break for an hour, so I expect we are back to the ballroom at 2 p.m. So before that, kita memiliki informasi untuk Bapak Ibu sekalian. Bagi Bapak Ibu yang ingin melakukan pre-registration technical visit untuk hari Kamis, dimohon Bapak Ibu dapat mengisi Google Form yang ada di Linktree yang nantinya akan ditampilkan di layar oleh panitia, atau bisa scan barcode di bagian belakang ID card Bapak Ibu sekalian. Baik, bagi Bapak Ibu yang ingin menjalankan ibadah sholat, dapat menggunakan musola yang berada di lantai 1. Baik, silahkan Bapak Ibu untuk menikmati makan siang selama 1 jam. Thank you, please enjoy your lunch.
Make a short